Hey folks, Poster, welcome back to another Pokemon Masters video, and since you guys asked, I'm gonna go ahead and do this video, just going over, I guess, and none of this is like absolute, whatever, right? It's some suggestions I'd like to put it for which lucky skills you probably should aim for your sync pairs. So, first of all, a few things that I do have to say. I'm just going to go over the sync pairs that have sync grids because I personally don't think, even though I'm doing it with Sceptile Donphan, it's just that I already spent the lucky scrolls on it, which is kind of sad. But I generally don't think you should spend lucky cookies on sync pairs that don't have their sync grid expanded yet. So, if a sync pair that doesn't have their sync grid expanded yet, who knows what they'll get in the future. Maybe in the future when they do get their sync grid expanded, they might get that one of those skills that come from lucky cookies onto like one of their sync grids, which would be a waste of your lucky cookie, right? So that's what and also generally, sync pairs with sync grids are just much stronger at the moment, unfortunately. But yeah, I generally don't think you should probably spend lucky cookies on sync pairs without sync grids at the moment. Just wait until they get their sync grids and then see what's the best, right? So also another thing that I do want to talk about, again, this is just generally suggestions, and if you do not get the best lucky cookie or lucky skill on your sync pair, but like you got like another one that's like not that bad, I would suggest you just keep the one that's not bad and then just move on to like another sync pair, right? Unless it's like extremely crucial. So anyways, let's go over them then. So let's go over strikers first, since strikers are the easier ones. All right, let's start with Charizard. So one thing I do have to mention is apparently they kind of nerfed Power Flux for some reason. I don't know why, but they did, which is super weird and annoying. So apparently the formula does not count the amount of gauges that you use for a move anymore, so that significantly cuts the damage of Power Flux. So for the most part, as long as your striker has crit, critical strike should be better in a lot of, like, it's critical strike at its best does more damage. However, that's not saying Power Flux is bad anymore. Power Flux still gives you a decent damage boost, and especially in Battle Villa where you're trying to conserve MP and not using your dire hits or whatever, that's where Power Flux is obviously better because, well, in those case scenarios, critical strike does not do any damage at all. But in general, a critical strike too, when you do have crits, does much more damage than Power Flux, and also Power Flux does not give you a damage increase when you use your sync move. But then again, in Battle Villa, it really depends on when you could actually get to use your crits at all, right? So there's that. So in general, critical strike 2 is probably better, except for in like Battle Villa scenarios where you're not using crits, then Power Flux would be better. But honestly, that aside, super duper effective 1 is not terrible either. So it's usually, most damage would probably be crit strike 2 and then Power Flux 3 and then super duper effective 1. Super duper effective 1. The good thing about super duper effective 1, which is why it's only a 1 and not like 2, so it's only a 10% boost and not like a 20% boost or whatever, 30% boost, is because it's like it's applicable in like so many scenarios, right? Because you don't need to have crit or whatever, it's just there, right? So anyways, yeah, critical strike 2 is probably the best when you're just going for like pure damage, right? As for Charizard, Gritty 3, Surging Sand 2, Power Reserves 2, Power Chain 2, Troublemaker, these are kind of whatever, right? So moving on to, let's see, what's the next one? Dugong. Super duper effective is not really great on Dugong because passives, like the same passives, they're additive, right? So when you're trying to go for lucky skills and passives, you're trying to go for some lucky skills or passives multipliers that the unit doesn't already have. So for example, Garchomp, right? Not that you should use it on Garchomp since it doesn't have sync grid expanded yet, right? But yeah, if you're using for example, I'm just using Garchomp for example. Garchomp already has Surging Sand, right? So if you give Garchomp Surging Sand again, that the multiplier it gets is much lower than, say, if you give Garchomp like Critical Strike or whatever. Even though Surging Sand is 30% and Critical Strike is only 20%, because with Critical Strike it's your original whatever is it Surging Sand 5 that Garchomp has, like 1.5 times. With Critical Strike it's 1.5 times 1.2, and with Surging Sand it's like 1.5 plus 1.2. Let's see, 1.5 times 1.2 is oh, actually this is a terrible example because they both add up to 1.8. But in general, plus 0. Yeah. This is that was a bad example, but in general, you do want to pick out different lucky skill. So Verdugon Super Duper Effective isn't as good, so you generally would want to go with Critical Strike, right? Since you do have Dire Hit and an MP refresh on Dire Hit, right? Moving on, let's see what's next. Gliscopod. I mean, again, Striker, you go for Critical Strike, right? Critical Strike 2, that's pretty straightforward. So there's that. Moving on, Haxorus. I mean, they're all. It really just depends on you. If you use generally, again, Critical Strike does more damage, but in Villas, But there are stages where you would use your crits, right? So it really depends. Like both are good, but at the best, Critical Strike does more. So for Haxorus, probably Critical Strike as well, right? What else? Especially with these units that do actually have MP refreshes on their crits, which you could actually MP refresh in Battle Villa. Critical Strike would be much better, right? In those cases. Move on, Houndoom, again, Critical Strike, probably, right? Infernape, Critical Strike, Kingdra, like all of these, Critical Strike, right? As long as they have crits to begin with, you should probably go with that, right? Metagross, same thing, Critical Strike. Even though Metagross, you only have 2 guaranteed crits before you Mega, but still Critical Strike just does so much more, right? Moving on, let's see what we got. Pikachu, even though Pikachu's Pikachu is technically a striker, but I mean, for Pikachu, honestly, I don't know, I probably venture to even give Pikachu something let's see. Not so. Maybe Defense Crush. That's not terrible. Oh, Hit and Run. Hit and Run would be nice, right? Hit and Run would be nice for Pikachu. I personally do believe, because most of the time you are just spamming Thunder Wave, just trying to get the sync move countdown and all that stuff. Although personally, I don't think Pikachu really needs a. I don't Pikachu doesn't do much with a Lucky Cookie. Unfortunately, just do something. Just don't spend Lucky Cookies on Pikachu. But if you have to, or if you really want to, just do Hit and Run if Pikachu's your favorite Pokemon or whatever. Hit and Run's not bad, since you're always spamming Thundershock anyways in Battle Villa, so you could get some potential, a 20% chance for a speed boost as well, which would be nice. Moving on, Alolan Raichu. I don't know why you're spending a Lucky Cookie on this guy. But Alolan Raichu doesn't have crits, so I guess just Power Flux 3 then, right? Moving on, what's next? Reuniclus. Reuniclus is interesting because you both Reuniclus does damage, but also has and here's the other thing, since the Power Flux nerf, Power Flux even at 6 gauges does less than Critical Strike now, unfortunately. So even if you're max 6 gauges, it still does less. Anyways. For Reuniclus, since you both could use it as a tank and striker, it really depends on what you're trying to use it for, right? If you're trying to use it for attacker, then you probably would want and especially on Reuniclus, right? Power Flux, because you don't have crit. But if you're using it as a pseudo tank that also deals some damage as well, especially if you're trying to get him pulse propulsion, all that stuff, probably Vigilance, right? Vigilance for tanks is the best skill. Which is I think Creamy Cookies Vigilance should be, where the heck is, Vigilance is in Creamy Cookies, right? So you could do that. Moving on. Next one. Oh, Hacktress. I made a mistake. Hacktress. I just went through these. Hacktress don't actually go for a critical strike. For Hacktress, actually go for a Lesson Confusion 9. Because Hacktress is an interesting case, right? Let's see. It's down. It's in the whatever these are called, crispy cookies, right? Lesson Confusion, or as high as you could go, right? It doesn't have to be the 9, but 9 is the best for sure. Lesson Confusion 9. The reason why you're trying to go for Lesson Confusion 9 and not like Clear Minded, which is the one that like prevents confusion like completely, is mainly because it's mainly because of like Outrage Confusion Boon, which we don't have at the moment. We need another dupe. But once you do get this, it powers up your moves by or your outrage by 50% when you're confused. So the reason why you want Lesson Confusion 9 is because you'll still have confusion on Hacktress, which does give you that 50% power increase over here, which is much more than Critical Strike would give, which is an extra 20%. This is 50%, right? But you also lower your chances of hitting yourself in confusion by 90%, which is great. And also for Kingdra, also misspoke. You should probably go for Dauntless, just because Draco Meteor lowers your special attack, and with Dauntless, you don't get your special attack lowered. Anyways, moving forward, where were we at? Oh, Salazar. Salazar. I mean, if you really want to, I mean, I guess you could just go do what was it called? Powerflux 3, yeah. If you really want to, use a luck on Salazar. Powerflux 3 for this one. Torkoal, honestly, Torkoal's a tech. Let's talk about techs later. Oh, that's all strikes. Oh, let's talk about techs then. So for Torkoal, you definitely there are some interesting things that you could do with Torkoal, because again, since it is a 1-gauge move spanner, you could also honestly just go for you could go for like stuff like Stoic if you want, which has 20% chance to raise your defenses. You could also go for the running hit and run thing, right? Which it does has a chance to increase your speed, which is nice, but like not that big of a deal, I personally don't think. But honestly, for Torkoal, I'd probably just go for Vigilance, because a lot of people use Torkoal for a tank as well, and Torkoal is a really good tank, so probably Vigilance. And if you want to use Torkoal for Striker, which again, Torkoal is a pretty phenomenal damage dealer, right? You should probably, like, none of these are like the best, but like maybe Powerflux 3, I guess. So you get a bit more boost than with Critical Strike, because like unless you're not going for Critical Strike and you're just going for Burn Synergy, both Burn Synergy, which is honestly not as good as going for one Critical Strike and one Burn Synergy, right? So I guess Powerflux 3 if you want to do damage to Torkoal. But I would just use Torkoal as a tank for the most part, because Torkoal already does enough damage on its own. It's best to get more survivability with Vigilance, which again, if you guys don't know, Vigilance just prevents crits. Moving on to another tech, Vileplume. Vileplume is weird. I don't know, maybe Vigilance to make a tank a bit more. I like Vileplume. I don't know who's gonna use it like on Vileplume, honestly. Maybe Troublemaker, I guess. So yeah. Moving on, let's see what's another tech unit in here. Palisand. It's damage, honestly, whatever. So I wouldn't go for Surging Sand. I mean, you can if you want. If you really just want to use this to do damage, again, like, come on, it really doesn't do that much. For Palisand, like, probably Vigilance, again, if you want to make it like a 1-gauge spammer. Again, the stuff like Hit and Run 2, all that stuff, right? You could maybe go for that. Moving on to Mew. Mew probably want Vigilance, because as good as Mew is as a damage dealer, 90% of the time you're going to use Mew as a tank, just because Mew is such a phenomenal tank, right? So Vigilance is probably the way to go here. Mew with Vigilance is just so like unbelievably powerful, right? So there's that. Moving on. Let's see, Meowstic. I mean, I guess same position where Vileplume is at. right? Either Vigilance or I guess Troublemaker, or yeah, I guess those are the main two. Moving on, Masquerade, same thing, honestly. Something like Vigilance, because Masquerade could also tank a decent amount as well, right? Vigilance or Troublemaker. No, Masquerade doesn't need Troublemaker, just Vigilance, I guess. If you really want. If you want like Masquerade to like do damage, which again, Masquerade doesn't really do much damage. I guess Power Flux, I don't know. Moving on. Liepard is an interesting one. Liepard, I'd probably go for Vigilance as well. I personally find Liepard much better, because Liepard could do a bit of both. You could use Liepard as a tank, or you could use Liepard to do damage. But damage is just way too situational for me. And using Liepard as a tank is just more reliable, right? Tank for evasion, not, for like actual bulkiness, because it's not really bulky, it's just evasion hacks, right? So probably Vigilance, I'd say. Moving on, Heliolisk is probably going to be another move, 1 gauge spammer, right, for the most part, when you're gonna be using it. So hit and run 2, maybe, right? Something like a hit and run 2, or again, one of those defense downs if you're using it with like a physical striker, which most electric types honestly aren't. But again, you won't necessarily be using it with electric types all the time, so I guess that doesn't really matter. Maybe Stoic 2. Stoic 2 is not terrible. Stoic 2, hit and run 2, or if you really wanted to do damage, I guess Perflux, but like why? And also I guess maybe Super Duper Perfective if you really want as well. For the most part, maybe Vigilance as well. I mean, it doesn't take that many hits though. Let's see. Okay, down to supports. Supports are mostly just going to be like Vigilance, right? Alexam, Vigilance. Honestly, like you want to use Alexam as a striker. If you want to use Alexam as a striker, then go for Powerflux 3, since it already has Critical Strike 2, right? So Alexam, you probably want to go for Vigilance. Let's see, what else is support? Hound, Infernape, Kingdra, Liepard, Masquerade, Meowstic, Metagross, Mew. Damn, are there really not that many support that have expanded Synchreds? Cool Spot, Haxorus, Mew, Metagross, Palisand, Pikachu, Raichu, Runiclus, Rotom. Okay, there's Rotom. Rotom, you definitely want to go for Vigilance as well. I guess, like, if you really don't want to spend you don't want to spend the Vigilance cookies, then maybe Stoic 2, maybe Hit and Run 2, but for the most part, you definitely would want to have Vigilance on Rotom. Let's see. Oh, that's last one. Superior. Superior. Probably Vigilance as well. Even though not a lot of people use Superior as a main tank, even though Superior is really, really tanky. Just because, like, in comparison to like Mew or Alakazam or Rotom, right? They don't have like, a Superior doesn't really have any capabilities of tanking other than just being naturally tanky, right? So maybe Vigilance, maybe just save your lucky cookies for someone else. So there we go. So yeah, that's me for this one. Just going over some, luck cookies for these units. And again, I do not suggest folks using luck cookies on units that don't have their Synchreds expanded yet. Just wait till their Synchreds get expanded first, and then go decide. So, anyways, that's me for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel for some more Pokemon Masters content. We'll be probably streaming Scribble later today with Pokemon, so that should be fun. So tune in to that. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.